A contested Dem primary doesn't just hurt Democrats in Texas and the Senate race and their Senate map overall. It can lead to the Democrats' worst nightmare, dun 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 dun, Senator Ken Paxton.
Because so many black folk, not only do you owe for the labor that was stolen and killed and all the other things.
Jasmine, were you a slave? Did she work for free for somebody?
She ain't never scared and she ain't never been. Who is willing to go toe-to-toe against the president?
All right, that's enough of that. We made it 9 seconds. Wow. Jasmine Crockett is running for Senate, and this is going to backfire on them bigly. We've got reports now that have come in from Republican strategists, almost giddy and gleeful about this. Chris Saliza, he's a big journalist. He said, an unnamed GOP strategist just made this point to me. You know, Jasmine Crockett's Senate campaign is very bad news for John Cornyn, the current senator from Texas who is up for re-election, and there's a reason why. Not that Jasmine's going to win the Senate seat, but John Cornyn is in the middle of a very contested primary, so we'll come back to those details. But here was the announcement from Jasmine, and it's the weirdest thing ever. It's like, for once, we kind of agree with what she posted in this video. Let's watch this together and see if you agree too. Texas, let's win this thing. Yeah. Jasmine for US, hashtag Texas tough. All right, here's what Jasmine posted on X. Let's listen.
How about this new one they have? Their new star, Crockett. How about her?
Yeah.
She's the new star of the Democrat Party, Jasmine Crockett.
Yeah.
They're in big trouble.
But you have this woman, Crockett. She's a very low IQ person.
True.
I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person.
Yeah.
Crockett. Oh, man.
She's a very low IQ person.
Somebody said the other day she's one of the leaders of the party. I said, you got to be kidding.
It's true.
Now they're going to rely on Crockett. Crockett's going to bring them back.
Man, she's so tough, isn't she? So heroic. Wow. And we agree with everything that the president said in there. She is very low IQ, and she's, I think, not as tough as she thinks she is. But she's essentially a social media influencer, and so she wants to, populate her follower count with everything that she can gain from an election campaign. But she's running, and I think it is ultimately going to backfire on her. I can't imagine that the independent parts of Texas are going to come racing over to her side, especially when she has that Fifth Element hairdo like the opera singer who is blue. Now, here's what her website looks like. So she's just launched this, and she booted out somebody else who, of course, was already running for this. And here she says, Texas tough, a fighter for our families, why I'm running. Texas has elected senators, politics as usual, blah, blah, blah. Does she have any issues? Affordability? She's trying to steal from Donnie. Okay. And any issues on this? No. Texas and our nation are heading in the wrong direction. I don't support Trump. So pretty thin. All that, not that substantive, just like her brain and personality. But here's the problem for this guy called John Cornyn, Mr. FISA himself over from Texas. Says here, Cornyn does have a path to victory here, right? If Jasmine is running now, he does have a path to victory, but it requires independents and Democrats crossing over into the primary for him over a more extreme challenger. So in the Republican Party, there will be a primary, and who is running against Cornyn? It's Ken Paxton. Think of it as a kicker in a football game. If you're close, it can make the difference at the end, right? Look at how Thad Cochran won in 2014. There are other examples, McCain in New Hampshire, Minnesota, Michigan primaries in 2000 as another example. In Texas, there were just over 2.3 million votes cast in 2024 GOP's primary. Of those, 7% in either the 2020 or 2022 Dem primary, according to the L2 file. Some of that was Dems crossing over for Nikki Haley, but some of it was also that there were state legislative primaries around school choice, so there were incentives in those districts for Dems to cross over for a more moderate GOPer, even though the Dem presidential primary wasn't contested. Now, Colin Allred did have a nominal Dem primary against the state senator, so there was reason for the Dems to vote in their primary. Now, since it will be difficult for Tallarico, the other woman or person running against Crockett, a contested Dem primary doesn't just hurt Democrats in Texas and the Senate race and their Senate map overall. It can lead to the Democrats' worst nightmare, dun 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 dun, Senator Ken Paxton. And Ken Paxton, of course, is challenging John Cornyn for the Republican nomination in the primaries. And Ken Paxton has also been talking about this, and we have a couple of clips over here. You see Greg Abbott was responding to this. He said in this clip, Jasmine Crockett supports reparations. Overwhelming majority of Texans are against this. Crockett may be right for California, but she's not right for Texas. And that's just from Greg Abbott, right? So, okay, that's fine. In other words, we support Jasmine Crockett for the Democrat nomination. And you almost want to support her for the presidency. Remember we were saying that a long time ago? Like Jasmine Crockett for the Democrat nominee for president. Yeah, I'm serious. I think they'll get obliterated if they were to do something like that. So that's why we support her, right? That's the kind of joke. But Greg Abbott is saying the same. Ken Paxton is also saying the same. Ken Paxton said, everyone knows Crockett will be soundly defeated. Now, we're 6 months out from a runoff, and Cornyn's already stolen $40 million that should have gone to Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan. He wants to sacrifice the majority by spending $100 million on his losing primary race for John Cornyn. It's beyond selfish. And John Cornyn over there in Texas, he said, well, I think she wins the Democrat primary, and she's the worst possible candidate they could have in Texas. Cornyn says she's unelectable, which is why we think she should be the nominee. Democrats, no, yeah, it's your time. First female president, historic black female. Yeah, go for it. No, we support it. Yeah, let's see how it works out for you. So they're working on that. And then we see that Colin Allred was basically, sounds like thrown out. He was the guy who was going to be running for this Senate seat. And then he decided, you know, I'm out. Jasmine is coming swooping in here and he can't compete with her hairdo, not even a little bit.
I want to ask you about your House race in 1 second, but just staying on this Senate race, because it really could determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Jasmine Crockett is very openly considering running. Is that part of why you decided to not run anymore?
Yeah, of course it is. And I think Jasmine's a friend of mine and we've served together. And I've known her since before we were both, in elected office. But it was about the fact that with, 3 strong candidates running, that we would certainly have a runoff. And I felt that that was not, in the interest of the folks who had, come up to me, tell me their stories, who would, open themselves up. And in many ways, to me, I've always thought about this and try to take my ego, out of how I approach public service. That I'm trying to ran for Congress, as you know, Dana, in the district where I was born and raised against a Republican who'd been there for 22 years. Nobody thought I could win that one. And I ran for Senate to represent the state that's given me a chance to do all the things that I've done, from playing in the NFL, to being a civil rights lawyer, to serving in Congress. And so this is a continuation of my attempt to try and put people first and now continue to serve my community just in a different way.
Can you tell me about the conversation that you had with your friend Jasmine Crockett, how that went down and how you made the decision to let her take the wheel? I assume that's the way that you view this.
Well, I wouldn't say that I view it that way.
All right, so he's out. She threw him out. Jasmine came in. She said, you're out of here, buddy boy. And he just packed up and left. But here was the other clip. So Crockett was out earlier. She says, I'm open to ending taxes on blacks, okay? But many blacks already don't pay none. They already pay none. Instead, we should send blacks checks.
Just this past week, I saw, I don't remember which celebrity, but it was actually a celebrity. And I was like, I don't know that that's not necessarily a bad idea. But I'd have to think through it a lot. One of the things that they propose is black folk not have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time, because then again, that puts money back in your pocket. But at the same time, it may not be as objectionable to some people about actually giving out dollars. But obviously, then you start dealing with the different tax brackets and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that, we argue the reparations make sense, because so many black folk, not only do you owe for the labor that was stolen and killed and all the other things.
Jasmine, were you a slave? Did she work for free for somebody as a slave? Wow. I didn't know that.
Right.
Did this other lady? That's crazy. Are you serious?
But the fact is, we end up being so far behind, right? And so it's how do you bring forth people? Exactly. And so it's if you do the no tax thing for people that are already, say, struggling and aren't really paying taxes in the first place, it doesn't really, exactly.
They may want those checks like they got.
Of course, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the EBT, the SNAP, and all the other things are not good enough. So they need reparations for people who were never slaves to be paid for by people who never owned slaves in the name of, I guess, equality or something. So we've got that. Then we've got John Cornyn, and he's responding saying she's basically unelectable. And I think after quotes like that, you can see exactly why. She doesn't really explain why she's running. She screwed up her launch, apparently. Amused is saying, is she not that bright? She briefly posted, then deleted her Senate launch video. It was a 44-second video of Trump calling her a low IQ person, and she couldn't even launch the video right. Well, thank you for validating the president's message. We appreciate that. But they also brought out this dude who I think was rapping a song or something like this. Yeah, a rapper just performed a song about her, and here's what he said.
She ain't never scared and she ain't never been. Who is willing to go toe-to-toe against the president?
All right, that's enough of that. We made it 9 seconds. Wow. Basically 3 seconds of song. Okay, so that's what's going on over there. I hope they play that on repeat all throughout Texas and see what the Texans have to say about that. All right, so that's his song. Nice hairdo. Oh, okay, I thought that was like a hat or something. That's actually just some bleached waves in there. So that's that. And then Jasmine Crockett came out and she gave a speech in front of the biggest teleprompters you've ever seen in your whole life. I mean, the whole point of teleprompters is you can't really see them. She's like, I want everybody to see them, okay? I want everybody to know that I'm reading these. I'm reading this off. They might as well just brought out a whiteboard or something, Just a whiteboard, just hold it up and she could just read from that, for crying out loud. That's how big these things are.
Texas turns blue. It won't be because of any one candidate, but because of each and every one of you doing your part. Turning Texas blue is what I want to talk to y'all about today.
Turning Texas blue is what I want to do. That would have been a better rhyme. It would have been more like a reverend.
So they tell us that Texas is red.
Yeah.
They are lying.
Okay, well, we're going to see. So, there's always a gamble on this. Like, we get a little bit squirmy-ish when we're like, yeah, Jasmine Crockett for the Democrat president nominee. Because what happens if she wins? And we're like, oh, gosh, it's the end of the country. But I think, Jasmine's a much safer bet, to be honest, than somebody like AOC. I think AOC's not as crazy and has a little bit less of a psychotic vibe to her. Not much, but a little bit less. So a little bit more palatable to broad swaths of America, whereas Jasmine Crockett is not. So, like, playing with AOC, I think, is playing with fire a little bit. Jasmine, I think we're good. You can nominate her. You can make it like an Obama thing, like hope and change, whatever. I think we're good. I think we'll be clear. So she's running now. And again, I think it's probably going to backfire. It's actually great news for Ken Paxton because now she's going to be drawing a bunch of the hard left over to her. And, well, maybe you can see Cornyn, right? If she's going to be so aggressive on the left, why would the independents not go over for Cornyn to maybe put him over Paxton if they really want to moderate? Like, they're not going to get it with Crockett. So we'll see. We'll see who comes out on top in Texas. But this person says very bad news for Cornyn. And if the Democrats want a less red Senate, they'll be better served with John Cornyn in there, quite frankly. John Cornyn, who we're not a big fan of because of his position on FISA. And we've seen him like multiple times when questioning people, just worried as hell about FISA. You're not going to delete FISA, are you? No, I guarantee we're not. He's like, okay, good. And then they all got spied on. And it's like, oh, coming back to bite you in your butt, isn't it, John? So, of course, we'll keep our eye on this, but Crockett's running for Texas. And for once in our lives, we agree with a post that she made on X that she's a moron and is low IQ. And Jasmine, yeah, I'm running for Senate. They all just want to be influencers. Watch her start a podcast and do collabs with Ted Cruz in the Senate. We'll see.